I think you're amazing.
You are too, Henry.
Thank you so much. Well, Perry, you are awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and I appreciate you what you're doing too, buddy.
Well, thank you. Because if you allow the world to define you, if you allow friends to define you, if you allow your spouse to define you, or anybody to define you outside of how God sees you, that does open the door to rejection. God bless you. I hope y'all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Thank
Thank
you.
God bless you
Thank you.
too. Thank you for having us.
Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Thank you so much for taking this opportunity to watch the show today. You are the best. So I really appreciate you. As I always say, you're not just a number here, you're family. And you've been following me all these years, and I really appreciate you. Well, the face that you see today really doesn't need an introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway because he's been on our show quite a few times. His name is Taron Jerome Harris. Taron is the host of his own show called TJ's Topics. Taron, thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Henry, for having me. It is such a pleasure.
Today we have a interesting topic. As you know, this is Black History Month. As many of you know, it is Black History Month, and today I was just want to have a conversation with Taryn because quite often we hear people say, "Well, we should just let the past be the past. We should just forget about history, forget about what happened in the past." And often I always think about, well, we don't say that during Pearl Harbor, or we don't say that during what happened in the Holocaust. But hold on, when it comes to Black history, we need to forget it. I don't understand that. So that's why I want to do a show today. And the name of our show today is Why We Won't Forget Black History. Black history is history, it's part of our history, it's part of the American history. So we're going to have a conversation today with my friend Taryn. Black history, uh, for many of you who may not be familiar with it, was created to focus attention on African Americans' contributions, which, Taryn, you know there's been many of them, uh,
Yes.
to the United States. It honors all Black people from all periods of the U.S. History, from enslaved people who was first brought over here from Africa in the early 17th century to African Americans living in the United States today. Today, Terry and I will have a conversation not only about Black history, but we're going to talk about key figures, events, and just many things that major Black figures and have done to pave the way for us today. So, I think in a nutshell, this will be very educational. Me and my friend Taryn was talking earlier today that unfortunately some schools. Now I know when I was in school, Taryn, they talk. I knew who Dr. Martin Luther King was. They talked about him, but today I don't know if they're really. I don't know if there's such thing as Black history. I don't know if they talk about. It. I don't know if they discuss it. Well, if they don't, you can watch it here. So, Taryn, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I'll let you go ahead and kind of get it kicked off. I'll go into some more stuff about Black history and um, just a few. Black history is so vast that we can't cover it all in 30 minutes. So,
Sure can.
so I'm only going to just discuss just a couple of highlights that just educational for educational purposes, and Taryn will be discussing. We'll have a dialogue together. So at this time, we'll turn it over to you, Taryn, and let us know your thoughts about Black history.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Henry. And I really do appreciate this time that we're able to discuss this very important topic. Black history is very important. You
Hmm.
know, regardless of how it's been swept under the rug by a lot of folks, and they still trying to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
If it had not been for the contributions that our ancestors made to this, not only to this country, but to this entire world, I mean, I'm not sure where we'll be today.
Hmm.
And so we have a lot to be grateful for with regards to how far we've came as a people, because and though we have come a long ways, we still have a long ways to go.
That is so true. And Taryn, I also think that if you are African American, you're pretty much robbing yourself if you don't have a knowledge of what Black history is all about. You'll be
You're
surprised
right.
how many people who don't know who how many Black people who don't know who Rosa Parks was.
Hmm.
Or you'll be surprised about people who don't know who invented Black History Month. And I think Taryn know who he is. And I'll let you say it, Taryn.
That's right. That was Carter G. Woodson.
And he was a distinguished Black author, editor. He was a publisher, historian. And he's recognized as his role in establishing Black History Month. And while there are many things about Black history I celebrate tonight, I'm so excited to address these highlights with Taryn tonight. So, Taryn, what are some highlights or some things about Black history that you find quite appealing?
Well, there are a few things. I mean, it's really a lot of things that I find appealing with regards to Black history. I mean, I think about some of the inventions that have come out over the years. I mean, things that we tend to take for granted. Like for example, potato chips, and you know, who would have thought that a Black person invented those?
Oh
Or
wow. I didn't even
yeah,
know that myself.
yeah, peanut butter and
Yeah.
and the dustpan and the ironing board and refrigerator and air conditioning. All those things were invented by Black folks.
Hmm.
The traffic light, and I mean, and the list goes on and on. And people use this stuff all the time, and they don't really think anything about it. But if you trace it back, you'll find out where it came from.
Yeah. So there are so many African Americans that have made a great contribution to the world. And as I said, Taryn, before the show started, um, many people, especially African Americans, uh, they they take it for granted, and I think it's very important, not just during Black History Month now, but just in general. Educate yourself, find out about your ancestors, find out where you came from. Find out about the civil rights movement. That's another thing I would like to discuss tonight. The modern civil rights movement began with who Rosa Parks. She was an African American woman who was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama. And if I were to ask the audience why she was arrested, I guarantee you some of them may know and some of them may not know. But I think, Taryn, I think you know why she was arrested.
Oh yeah, she refused to give up
Yep.
her seat on the bus to a
Yep.
white man.
Yep. And so she created that movement in the late 50s. And right about that time, that's when we'll talk about Dr. King and all that stuff. Dr. King was part of the civil rights era as well, and he made a great contribution to the civil rights movement leading up to his death in the late '60s. So uh, I love it. 'Cause somebody said not too long ago that Rosa Parks stayed in her seat so President Obama can stand up. Ain't that amazing?
It is amazing. It really is.
Like you just said it, Taryn, we've come a long way as African Americans because if you think about it, look at all the things that Black people had to endure during the civil rights movement and leading up to where we are today. I don't think we are where we should be, but I'm glad that we're not where we used to be. And while I may not have been here at that time, I am still grateful for the people like Rosa Parks, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I interviewed him on the show. Just some highlight figures, Dr. Maya Angelou. All these Black powerful people who made us into um, who we are today. The sad part is that African Americans' basic rights were long denied to them.
That's right.
You want to talk about that a little bit and what some of those denials were?
Oh yeah, I'd be glad to, Brother Henry. And matter of fact, living where I live, right here in West Memphis, I can tell you a little bit about some of the things that were denied to Black people. Now, and I'm like you, I wasn't around during that
Yeah.
time. By the time I came along, the civil rights movement had long ended. But thanks to all of the older people who were around at that time and what they experienced, they were able to impart a lot of that knowledge into me. And
Hmm.
so that's why I'm able to try to share a little bit with others now.
Hmm.
And but right here in West Memphis, and I know it's not just here in town, it was all over the country.
Hmm.
But right here where I lived, segregation was, I mean, it was the order of the day. And particularly in residential areas like different subdivisions that we have here in the city, um, we had like all white neighborhoods, and Black people weren't allowed to go in those neighborhoods. And if they went in them, they had to be out of there before the sun went down.
Hmm.
And also here in West Memphis in the school district, segregation, though it had been abolished in the 1950s with Brown versus Board of Education,
Hmm.
they didn't end segregation here in our school district until the early 1970s
Hmm.
because we still had a predominantly white high school and then a predominantly Black high school.
Hmm.
And same thing with elementary and junior high. Well, segregation kind of wore out its welcome here until the state had to get involved and said, look, it's time to end segregation in these schools. It's
Yeah.
time for everybody to come together.
Yeah.
And so,
Even when you think about the Jim Crow, a lot of people are like, well, what is Jim Crow? I'll give you the definition. Jim Crow law enforced racial division, segregation in the United States, and pretty much treated people unfairly. And it was all based on race. The Civil Rights Act in 1964 hastened the end of the legal Jim Crow. It secured African Americans equal access to restaurants. Some of the things you just mentioned, Taryn, hotels, transportation, public facilities. We have access to that now. And Taryn, I was thinking about this earlier today. We're talking about the middle of 1960. That wasn't too long ago
no,
with
it wasn't.
segregation.
No, it wasn't. No, you just talking about over 50 some years ago. I mean, okay, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968.
Yeah,
Okay, so fast forward to now, that's only been like 56 years ago.
yeah. And I was thinking about that earlier, like you just said, how far we've come as it relates to that, because it's sad that, black people didn't have access like white people did. There were, and we'll put up pictures, there were signs that said whites only.
Mhm.
A black person, I think you mentioned this, Terry, couldn't even walk on the same sidewalk as a,
Nope,
as a white person.
that's
Uh,
right.
there were a lot of repercussions if you didn't, if you violated the law as it relates to what we're talking about. A lot of people were beaten. There were mass arrests. People were sprayed down with water hose. There were church bombings, and a lot of this stuff even occurred when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Came on the scene. And as I said earlier, he came in, and he was part of the civil rights era. He was a civil rights leader. He was a prominent leader of the civil rights movement between 1955 and leading up to his death in 1968. I love Rosa Parks. I love Dr. Martin Luther King. I think they are. Uh, I would say they're probably like the major. I wouldn't say overall major figures, but you got to go back to like, Frederick Douglass.
Yeah,
I was looking at his relationship with the president at that time. You
that's
know,
right.
Abraham Lincoln. Based off of my research and things like that. And I just think it's quite crazy that no laws were created for white people, but you had to
Mhm.
create a law where we can have access and liberty just like they have access and liberty. Why does a law have to be created for me to be treated fairly? Why does a law have to be created for me to have access and the freedom that everybody else has access and freedom in? So what are your thoughts about that, Terry? And
Well, Brother Henry, you know, I we have to dig deep on that. I mean, let's go all the way back to the beginning of slavery,
hmm
in the 1600s.
hmm
And then we'll have to come up to the point where, all these laws and stuff were
hmm
what that you're talking about that were made. Well, see, first of all, when they brought our ancestors over here to this country, they didn't bring them over here to be citizens.
hmm
They brought them over here to be servants.
yeah,
And see, the purpose of black folk in this country wasn't to, you know, be equal with with everybody else. But see, basically, black people were considered property.
not even human either.
That's right. That's right. No, because remember, who's that president? Thomas Jefferson, I believe,
hmm
one of the earlier presidents, when it was drawing up the what was that, the Bill of Rights and everything, talking about that the Negro was considered uh 3/5
Yeah,
of a human.
yeah.
3/5. And they looked at us as monkeys and apes and gorillas.
hmm
And then in the 1920s and a little bit before that, they had black folks trapped in the zoo on display as an exhibit.
Mm.
And then there was one instance where they were mocking black women. You know how black women have all the curves and shapes and stuff,
Mhm.
all the everything. Well, anyway, they had them in a situation where uh they were beginning to mock them, because of their shape and everything, how they were created. And I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, but they started making like certain dresses, whatever,
Mhm.
where they had to have the curve, have the rump like this to make it seem like they.
Yeah,
Because see, sisters had all that,
yeah,
and it was natural.
yeah,
They had to fix it so that they could be built like that too.
yeah.
But they weren't doing it because of admiration.
Yeah.
They were doing it because it was out of mockery.
Mhm.
And I tell you, it's ridiculous.
Well, it's like those shows they did back in the day where a white guy would paint his face black.
Yeah,
That was a real big deal back in the day.
that's right. Blackface.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Sure did. And oh my goodness. I mean, we could be sitting up here all night long talking about some of the things that have happened, racism and all that. I mean, and very subtly, some of these things are still going on today.
Mhm.
It may not be quite as prevalent as it was during that time, but very subtly, it's still there. And one reason why I think it's still there is because you have people who are still teaching that stuff to their children and their grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they would ever stop teaching these babies that ignorance, eventually all that would just go away. It would die down, and it would just within the next 2-3 generations. I don't think racism would be as prevalent as it has been for all these years.
Yeah, and you're right. You're so true. Uh, and I was thinking about that too. I believe if a person is racist, I believe it's something that they were taught, as you see it.
Yes,
I don't think any baby comes into the world and looks at a different race. Oh, he's black. You know,
absolutely not.
oh, he's white. It's like I just feel like that's not right, and I feel
Mm-mm.
like that racism is taught. I don't think anybody is inherently racist. I believe that's something that you're taught.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to view people differently. You start to see people differently. You start to treat people. There may be laws set in place today, but at the same time, that spirit of racism still is in America. And
Yes,
we see it through the political system. We see it through the church system. I mean,
yeah,
we see it all around all around us, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it. They say, like you just said earlier, they say sweep it under the rug. But I feel like what you don't address, um, it doesn't get better. And I feel like, you, as I said earlier, we need to know about Black history. Black people need to know what our ancestors are and the people that went before us. This was way before me or either you, Taryn, even came on the scene.
that's right.
Like, they need to know this is what. Now, is it hard? I showed y'all some pictures earlier, being black people being water holes and all that type of stuff. Some of the trauma they went through. Is it hard to look at that today and say, "Wow, that's what they went through"? Dr. Martin Luther King went to jail and was beaten, and all these people went through all this for me. I mean, that no wonder why we need to celebrate this month. No wonder why we need to take Black History seriously. It's our month. It's our month to celebrate, and we have a right to celebrate it. So if you are Black and you are African American, you need to be proud of that. Who was that? Was it? There was somebody that says, "I'm Black and I'm proud." Was that somebody sung that, or was that just a part of a speech or something?
That was James Brown, the
Yeah,
Godfather of soul.
yeah. You said, "Say it loud. I'm Black and I'm proud."
That's right. That's
Say it
right.
loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed. I know a few people may watch this and get offended. If you are offended by what we're talking about, you're part of the problem. You're part of the system of things. Because anybody in their reasonable mind, if you're not African American watching this, would be like, they got a right to talk about it. They have a history. We celebrate that. Just like every year, they talk about Pearl Harbor, they talk about the Holocaust. There are different other major historical events that they talk about and that we celebrate. But when we come to Black history, we don't want to talk about it because it's considered irrelevant and not important. Well, Rosa Parks is not irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is not irrelevant to me. Dr. Maya Angelou is not irrelevant to me. Reverend Jesse Jackson is not irrelevant to me. All these major figures who paved the way so we can be who we are and what we are today, they are not irrelevant, and neither is their message irrelevant. And as long as I live, as long as Taryn lives, and millions of people that's just like us, we're going to make sure that Black History Month stays alive and well. Is there anything else, Taryn, would you like to add? I didn't know if you had any notes or anything else you would like to add to
Well,
today's
Henry, I tell
segment.
you what, you and I have covered a great deal of issues pertaining to Black history
Mm-hmm.
today. And I think, you know, it's important that people understand this, and not just our people, but all people.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to know, because I mean, I like to imagine what this world would be like if we never existed. You know,
Yeah.
if it was just all of white folks
Mm-hmm.
and others, and we didn't, you know, we weren't around. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, okay, my thing is this: uh, who would have came up with some of the things that I mentioned earlier? You know, if they had ever came up with them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would there be air conditioning to keep you cool in the summertime, or would we have the traffic lights, or would we have oh yes, I forgot, the internet.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Black man that developed the internet, the concept of having two different computers talking to each other.
Yeah.
He did that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, now you and I, we pretty much grew up without the internet.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't have Google and YouTube and Yahoo and all that stuff like we have today.
Yahoo!
But we owe it to a brother
Uh-huh.
who came up with the idea for computers to talk to each other. I mean, I think that is
And
just
think about it.
fantastic.
And from computers that went from computers to iPads and all this other stuff that was birthed. You remember those old computers years ago, back in the 80s, late 80s, 90s?
Yes.
I think that's neat. But a lot of people need to do their research, like Taryn just said. You'll be surprised that some of the things that you so enjoy today was invented by a black person.
That's
And I,
right.
and I know that may be small to some people, but to me, it's a big deal.
Yes.
And we're not trying to make this about, white and black. I mean, that's not the intentions of why I'm doing this show.
No.
I'm just trying to show African Americans that's watching that you are intelligent. You have a brilliant mind. You are internally and externally a beautiful human being. You are a beautiful person. And I think that's amazing. Some of the things, like you said, Taryn, was invented. And I think a lot of that just comes from, research. And you'll be surprised what you may learn. I was sitting on my uh, recliner today, just Googling some stuff, looking at different stuff about Black history, who invented it, different key figures. And I was really impressed. And I'm sure I only dive into like just a little of it. Black history is so vast and so big that it's just hard to cover it in a short amount of time. But I believe Taryn and I covered a lot of ground today. And before we say uh, have a great day, I want to ask you to put in the comment section, what about Black History Month that you find appealing? What do you like about Black History? What do you dislike about it? Were there some that was it something that you've learned today that you didn't know about Black history? We would love to hear that. There's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. We're just here to learn all together. And Taryn, thank you so much for taking this opportunity to watch today. Um, Taryn has a podcast himself called TJ's Topics. And I believe, Taryn, you go on YouTube and you type in what to find you.
Just put my name in there, Taron Jerome Harris.
Yeah, he does shows, or he tries to do shows consistently. They typically go up between Sunday night and early Monday morning. I get them every Monday morning. I either watch it on my way to work. Sometimes they be so good, I'll get Taryn a call at 5 in the morning. Hey, bro. I'll call later in the evening, but he has a great show himself. Make sure you subscribe to his channel, connect with him, and he talks about all sort of topics on his show, kind of like my show. But I believe you will be truly inspired. I think you'll benefit something by connecting with him. He's been a good friend of mine, and I'm so glad to have you on the show again. I think this was a great subject, and I think it's a necessity that we cover, and I think we did it with excellence. So thank you so much, Taron, for being on the show today.
Well, I thank you too, Brother Henry, for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
Well, thank you so much. We're asking everyone that's watching, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Henry Harris 100. Make sure you connect with us on the Brother Henry and You show. Hit the like button or the follow button. Connect with us on Soul TV as well. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Well, Perry, you are awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and I appreciate you what you're doing too, buddy.
Well, thank you.
Because if you allow the world to define you, if you allow friends to define you, if you allow your spouse to define you, or anybody to define you outside of how God sees you, that does open the door to rejection.
God bless you. And I hope y'all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Thank you.
God bless you too. Thank you for having us.